What is the most important tool you can use to win your games in Deadlock? Is it killing lane creeps? Is it sliding? Is it jump dashing? Is it wall bounces? Movement tech? Is it the vents? Is it farming? Or the jungle? Or running boxes? Gold statues? It is none of the above. This is the zipline, the most misunderstood tool in the game. Why do you not want to push past your own zipline? Why do they even matter? And how much and why do ziplines win or lose you the game? By the end of this video, your macro is going to be on the next level, or you're allowed to thumbs down and trash talk me in the comments. Let's get right into it. This is a zipline in Deadlock. This one's yellow. I like yellow. It's a tool to get back to base whenever you need, stack up on HP, buy items, or rotate to another lane. And that's probably what most of you think of when you think of ziplines. It's like a tool to get around the map, it's a good movement tool, and it helps you play the game. But what if I told you that ziplines are literally the reason you're losing or winning games in Deadlock? Compared to other MOBAs that don't have this movement tech, ziplines really dictate the map state in Deadlock, which is what makes it unique. And today we'll talk about why the ziplines dictate the map state, how they help you win games, and how you can abuse the fact where your zipline is to determine what is safe to farm, where it's safe to fight, how you should fight, and how you can just win games by pushing lanes to extend your zipline, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And this is a topic I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. It's actually quite a deep, complicated topic, so I was always kind of scared to do this video, but I think I'm finally ready. So during this entire video, I really want you to keep track of what I'm doing in the game, but I also really want you to keep track of the minimap on the bottom right, because this is going to be very, very important to understand, and to understand how to abuse what you have efficiently. So we'll go over this replay, and the reason I picked this replay is because we were behind for most of the game. But in this game, there's really so many good examples of how Zipline and Mapcontrol turned the game around and made us win the game in the end. Spoilers. And we're getting right into it. Here is right after laning stage. We are already behind 4K as a team, and it's not looking too good. And team is ganking us, my page dies, and I use the zipline to get back to base. But what I really want you to think of when you think of ziplines is ziplines dictate the map control, okay? Obviously, ziplines allow you to get in and get out to where the air zipline ends, right? Which means in those positions, not only can you escape by jumping on the zipline and then doing a dash tag off the zipline to escape from enemies very easily, which is one of the most common movement techniques in the game. The more important part is that it will allow your teammates to get to that point on the map quite fast too, right? Which means you can always draw like a virtual kind of map control line on the map. And if you look right now, let's just draw a virtual line across the end of our blue sapphire zipline. And this is kind of the amount of space and map control we have as a team right now. And vice versa, the rest of the map is now occupied by the Amber team. And the reason that is simply because, again, we're pushing right now, we're pushing into a walker. If the enemy comes and protects the walker, we can always very easily escape and get out, right? And this map control changes, or this map control obviously changes every single second in the game, right? Every time a zipline is being pushed. And that's why in a lot of guides and tutorials, you always hear people say, push lanes. And that should be your number one priority. It doesn't matter if you're a carry, a support, or anyone else. Pushing out lanes should come before anything else. Before looking for team fights, before farming, before stealing enemy jungle, because it gives you ways in and ways out, and makes you survive and makes you more likely to win team fights. So if we're looking at the situation on the map right now, the enemy is trying to run and earn, right? The position on both teams is all across the map, but the longer the urn is being held, the more likely people are on both teams to rotate towards the urn, because the urn is an objective that gives you a lot of money. And because our lane, our right lane here, is being pushed into the enemy side of the map quite far, it's not as trivial for the Dorman to just walk over and take the urn, right? Even if they have the number advantage here, they couldn't just, right now, they couldn't just go and just walk to the urn and deposit. They could try, but it would very likely result in them just dying. Why is that? Well, as you can see, very easy for everyone else on my team to rotate, right? Even if we don't have zipline speed boosts, Kelvin and Seven can take the zipline all the way from their walker, the position they have right now, and get to the urn in a reasonable amount of time. Whereas if you look at the enemy players here on the map, which is Warden and Paradox that are on the other side of the map, there is not a trivial way to get to the urn. They will be slower in most scenarios than my Seven and my Kelvin if it comes to a 6-man fight, right? Not every fight around the urn is a 6-man fight, and this is not me telling you that you should fight around 6, but again, if we look, what would be the fastest way for the Warden and the Paradox to get to the urn drop spot as fast as possible? Well, they could take the forward TP on the secret shop, and they would end up right here on our side of the map. It's a very risky play. The chance of them getting caught out at any moment during their travel is really high, especially once they teleport to our side of the map. So the only other realistic way for them would be to go back to blue lane or the left lane, yellow lane, and then take the zipline all the way here, right? Or take the zipline to here, and then they still have the slow path of starting from then. They still have to get to the urn, which there are movement tech, right? You can slide, you can use the vents, etc. But the distance they have to cover is just very long, and there's a long way on foot that they have to cover. Whereas again, our Kelvin and our Seven can just simply take the zipline, and especially if they have zipline boost, they will be right there, right? Which also means it is safe for my team right now, or for us, to occupy the space on the urn right now, even though we technically don't know how many people there are coming on the enemy team. If we look at the perspective of my team only, we really have no info whatsoever on the enemies, right? All we know is the Dorman has the urn, and he's kind of rotating slowly towards the urn. So we know that they probably want to deposit the urn eventually, right? There's really no reason in the early game for the enemy not trying to deposit the urn. Sometimes teams hold the urn so the enemy can't steal them, but that is usually when it's a middle urn fight, an even urn fight, and one team is far behind. So if Dorman's team was behind right now and they wouldn't want us to get a free urn to get even more money, right? They would hold it, maybe run it to their base, which is like more advanced tech. But we know for a fact that the enemy wants to come in. But because our ziplines, especially the zipline on the right side, on the urn, is so far into the enemy territory, we occupy all this map space here. And again, I just want you every time to think of a virtual line that covers the territory we have. And I know we're taking this urn fight in specific, but right now our map control is actually quite good. Even though we are behind in money by like 6k, right? So we are behind, which usually should mean that we have less map control. It is more likely for the enemies that are more farmed to push lanes. But the enemy in this game, or in this case right now, is not doing a great job at really pushing the creep waves. And that's why the creep waves are so essential. They provide map control, and with map control come other perks, like being able to farm enemy jungle camps, right? This is space that I or my team can actually take pretty safely, with a lower chance of being punished. Now, Page is not the greatest farmer, but if I was in the spot of my Page right now, I could just walk over if I wanted to that creep camp, clear it very fast. It's on the enemy side of the map, which gives my team a gold advantage because we're stealing creeps from the enemy side of the map, which means we're taking resources away from them, right? And why is it safe to farm here? Well, if they come in, right, I can use my teleport, get to the zipline and escape, right? If the enemy tries to like hard contest, and I notice it's a fight that is winnable, my team, again, can rotate to this spot very fast. Over the zipline or through the area of the map that we are controlling, right? So I'm just gonna let this play out here. I'm gonna show you how this goes. It is gonna be a hard fight for us to win, but depending on the position of the lane, we can kind of decide on what to do. Right now, I am farming a creep camp, right, on my side, and we are behind, so we have to be like kind of careful. But we're still holding the forward position here. And again, keep in mind, this is our vision. I know 3 people of the enemy are coming, but because our lane was pushed up so far into the enemy territory, we can actually put aggression on the enemy pretty safely. Because as you can see, and as I just described, if we look at the overall vision, or the overall vision of both teams, The Paradox is still on blue. In fact, even the blue lane is pushing in, so the Paradox has no way really to rotate to the urn fight fast. And the Warden decided it wasn't even worth his time to even come to the urn fight, which means we end up pushing aggressively into the enemy. Now, not every fight is going to result in us getting a kill here, even though we're behind in money. But as you can see, our Abrams is very close. So even if we have to fall back, we are up in numbers. And we're up in numbers simply because we pushed out the lane. What ends up happening is the Doorman realizes, wait, there's actually no way for them to take that urn right now, right? It's looking very bad. Which again, we realize too, and we kind of back out, but I always try to keep an eye on the map and make sure, that's my number one priority, I make sure that this right side lane is pushed, okay? And the same priority should go for an enemy. A smart enemy will try to push out that lane also. And notice, as soon as I realize that this lane is being pushed a bit more, and as soon as I notice that the Doorman is now rotating over to try to deposit the urn, the number one priority I have is pushing out this wave and forcing the Paradox out if I can, right? In fact, we're going aggressive here, and we might even end up getting a kill because the Doorman decided, or sorry, the Paradox decided, well, we kind of need to, get this lane to the urn so we can drop it in. Now, the enemy shows up here with multiple people, and I actually end up dying for it, right? So it might seem like it's not the greatest play. But if you look what happened on the rest of the map, because the enemy rotated so many people over, and it took them so long to rotate over, yeah, they got a 1-for-1 trade, but they had to rotate 3 people over, and in the end the urn despawned, and they didn't get the urn in. And if you look at the gold difference or the soul difference, now suddenly the game is about even. Just because we held control on the lanes. And this is why lane control is so important. Every time your creep wave pushes, yeah, you're getting money, and creeps, especially in the early game, normal creep waves are just worth more than the jungle, right? The further the creep wave is towards the enemy side of the map, the more map control you have, and the more your team will be able to play the game on the map. And I like doing stuff like I'm doing right now a lot. And this is also why I end up dying quite a lot, where I play pretty aggressive for my team. And here I make sure that the zipline keeps on being pushed. And as soon as I see people ganking me, I teleport out, right? And I'm safe. And the enemy is too scared to chase me further. Why? I am in the protection of my zipline. And I know I use the word zipline a lot in this game. But the enemy just can't get to me in a reasonable amount of time before I can jump on the zipline, do the jump dash tech where I jump off and get away. And every meter that the enemy steps past their zipline, they risk my team coming in and turning the fight around. This brings me to my next point, which is that is also why objectives in this game are so ridiculously important, especially walkers, right? Like after the laning stage, in most games, most Guardians end up dying around the 14 to 15 minute mark, right? In very one-sided games, some Guardians can stay up for a long time, but we're going to focus on walkers. What walkers provide is a natural line of defense that automatically will push the enemy creep wave back to their side. Which means if you look at the map right now, because we are up on walker, anytime the enemy creep wave pushes all the way to my walker, there is going to be a point where they stop. They're stopped by the walker, right? And usually by that time, you will have someone on your team come in and clear the creep wave and push it back the other way, right? So it's a natural barrier. It's like a dam for water, right? Every time, even if there's like a big creep wave that accumulated on the enemy side, if there's like 8 or more creeps, they will have to stop at the walker and shoot the walker. And if your team plays the macro correctly, someone is going to come and shove that creep wave back to the enemy side. Whereas, if you compare this to the other side of the map, or if you compare this to the same side of the map, on the enemy team, Amber, because we killed their walker so early, if a creep wave is pushing down their wave, there is no natural barrier to stop the creep wave. Which means the creep wave, if not controlled by a player, will go all the way to the enemy base and then only be stopped by the base guardians. The equilibrium of the creep wave is going to be more on the enemy side. The creep wave will be more around this area of the map than it will be around this area. Because again, we have this natural barrier that every time it shows up here, it's going to counter push. And you will probably have noticed this in your games, where if your lane is lost and the enemy still has a Guardian up, it's very easy to notice with Guardians, then the creep wave, even if you push it out towards the enemy Guardian, it comes back very fast, right? Because every time it ends up at the enemy Guardian, the enemy creeps will overwhelm them and push back to your side. Which means, because the creep wave has more time on the enemy side of the map, that means naturally on this right side of the map, my team, Sapphire, the blue team, will have more map control. So on this side of the map, it will more often than not result in something like this, where we have more map control overall than the enemy. And every minute of the game that passes in this equilibrium where you're up a walker or you're up a tower means there's more opportunities to steal enemy jungle or to get kills on the enemy side of the map, right? Like these creep camps are now suddenly free for the taking for my team in certain scenarios, whereas the enemy doesn't really have a lot of free farm to steal on our side of the map. And that is also why the mid walker is so important. The mid walker is like the bastion of your team, right? Like it gives you like this like big area of map control that you have, which will allow you safely to secure your own jungle, secure your own double sinners, right? And secure the middle of the map, where if this walker dies, suddenly there's like a big dent on the map. And we'll get to that during this game. And yeah, we'll just continue here. So right now, the enemy is still a bit ahead. They actually made a really good play where they made an aggressive play as 4 people. They pushed as 4 people on the left side and gained map control back there. And right now it's looking very bad for us, right? The enemy is basically controlling the map and the enemy is ahead 6k, right? So my very first instinct here as a player is number one thing, make sure that the wave is pushed back so we regain some map control, right? There is jungle up that I could farm, but I'm not doing that because it's going to hurt my team and in the end it's going to hurt myself. I push out the lane very aggressively and immediately when I get this wave control, when the wave is pushing to the enemy, I make a very aggressive play and go for a sinner steal. And I even know here that the enemy Infernus is around. Why do I do it anyways? Well, I know that if he contests me, that will give my creeps even more time to push towards the walker, put some damage on the walker, and again, give us more map control. Okay, so the enemy Infernus right now has to make the choice between fighting me or focusing on the creep wave. And he ends up fighting me. I lift him. I'm not really in super danger of dying. I know I probably won't be able to kill him here, by the way, right? And I realize this and I get out. And this might seem like a random play, but what actually ends up happening is, because the Infernus was so occupied with making sure that Sinner is secured for his team, right? A double creep wave crashed into the enemy tower, and this is not the biggest deal, but 2 of these creeps died before the enemy Infernus was even in range, which means they just lost like 2 creeps on the creep wave. But more importantly, again, gives us map control, opens up the map, and allows our team to do more things on the map. In this case, the left side of the map is really not there's really not a lot, right? Like most jungle camps are cleared. There's not really a lot of value to be gained on this map. So on this side of the map. So the only thing that's important is that the walkers stay clean. But what I did here is I did buy time, because now this entire creep wave has to push all this way back and someone has to kind of push with it, right? In this case, it's even 2 people, because the doorman rotated it over, because the doorman saw that I was fighting the Infernus. So the doorman rotated it over. So now there's 2 people on the enemy team that really can't do much right now, right? Like they have to push out the creep wave. Like, yeah, the Infernus might go back and farm like jungle here, but that's their own jungle. It's not really get them more ahead, right? The enemy Infernus cannot go into my jungle and steal farm to get ahead. And I'm out. I rotated to mid. And again, number 1 priority. And I really haven't jungled much this game, right? Like I'm best. Wraith is one of the best junglers in the game, but I'm really not jungling much. In fact, I don't know what that. I remember this game now clearly because the jump badge is bugged, and I think I die for it here. That was really frustrating, actually. I don't know. Sometimes there's a bug with the jump pads where it just doesn't jump. Yeah, I'm just dead. So we're down 1. My team gets 1 counter kill, but it's still looking very bleak here, right? In terms of map control, we're about to lose 2 walkers. Like our right side walker is very low HP, and left side they're committing for it. And as soon as I come back, I immediately go back and make sure that our walker doesn't die. And because the enemy didn't quite get it there, that was still an okay trade for us. But that was the last few minutes were actually not bad for the enemy, mostly because I died because of the jump pad. So during this fight going on, my Yamato actually decides to push the blue walker. And I just want to talk about this real quick, in case you guys don't know. The blue walker, I called it a bastion for like map control for every team, but it's also the hardest objective in the game to get. It is actually harder to crack than base guardians. It's harder to crack than the enemy Patreon, believe it or not, because it provides everyone around it with resists. The sidewalkers do too, but because the sidewalkers have less HP and are easier to shoot, they tend to fall eventually. The mid-walker in a lot of games, especially in high Eternus games, stays up almost constantly until the very late game because it's so hard to push into it, right? Like there's only one small, narrow way that you can shoot the walker, and the walker will always be able to shoot back at you. And there is a few off angles you can take, right? You can jump up here and shoot from like the other side, but they're very risky because there's like a veil, whereas both sidewalkers have like easier ways to engage them. And my Yamato decides to push up here, which wouldn't be a bad play if the enemy team was occupied, but the enemy team, clearly we pushed them away from the walker, so the next thing they're going to do is they're going to try to defend their territory, right? And they're going to rotate to mid, and my Yamato is just going to die, which is not the biggest deal actually, because the enemy committed a lot of people for it. They sent like 4 or 5 people for one kill. The time invested is probably not worth it, because during that time we can, start doing other things again, like clearing our own jungle, invading the enemy jungle, etc. Okay, I moved forward a tiny bit in the replay, and here is a game that you can play every single time you're in spawn. Doesn't matter if you revive or you went back to buy and regen, and it is, where should I go and why should I go where I'm going? If you get this right, most of the time, it's actually a really important decision in the game, right? Like you make consistence constant in the game, but like deciding on which side of the map you go and then which zipline to take is actually really essential. And this is actually like, this scenario is actually quite a complicated one. So if you look at the minimap, both of our side towers are being pushed in. The left side is still like somewhat in the middle. There's a 1v1 happening right now, and there's a Calvin close. And on the right side, my creep wave is dead, and the enemy is pushing in with an Infernus, right? And the creep wave. And my next creep wave didn't even spawn yet. It's not here, right? And in middle, my team is pushing S2 into the mid walker. Now, if you consider what I just taught you about the mid walker, it's a really risky play to push S3. In fact, walkers in general get more resist the more people push, right? So if you have 3 people shooting it, it actually takes less damage than if 2 people are shooting it. And also, you have to consider that the more people you are stacked with, the less money you get. That means from kills, from lane creeps, from jungle, etc., right? So it is actually not the most efficient way to deathball S6. And that's why you see in a lot of high-level games, not people running around S6 at all times until the late game, right? In the late game, when the final fight needs to happen or you need to win a big team fight, of course you 6-man fight. But in the mid game, and it's 18 minutes, I would consider this mid game, people run around in smaller packs. So I will not show up middle here. By the time I'm middle with the zipline, the creep wave is going to be pushed towards the enemy walker. And again, best case scenario is I show up here and we're not going to really get a lot done. Again, mostly because mid walker is really hard to take, but also, and I didn't mention this earlier, but also because mid walker is the easiest place in the map to get to. Doesn't matter where the enemy is, right? If the enemy is here, they can take the zipline to middle quite fast, get through here, right? If the enemy is in base, they can just take the zipline to mid walker. And if the enemy is right, they can do the same thing, right? It's really easy at any point in the map to get to mid walker to defend. So you can be sure as hell that the enemy is going to defend the blue walker with at least 1-2 people. And if they show up with 2 and we are pushing with 3, there's a very high chance we're going to die, okay? So middle here is not an option. So I have to decide between left or right. And on the left side here, I consider this, most likely it's just over. It's too late to defend. Even if I had speed boost and I show up here, the walker is 1. The Infernus, if he commits, we'll kill the walker, just shoot the walker, and best case scenario, we kill the Infernus in a 2v1 after he kills the walker, right? And the reason it's not savable is the enemy creep wave, because there's no creeps fighting them, will be in range to where the walker is shootable and it has no backdoor protection very soon in like, basically before I show up. Which is why I make the choice to the left lane, or my right, I should say, because this is still a salvageable situation. The creep wave is not quite as close to the walker yet. There is a fight that might happen, and so I rotate over here. Now, it just so happened that the Infernus did not actually push the wave. Might be because my page hit a really good 1 or 3 to nuke the creep wave, to stop the Infernus from pushing. If the Infernus had the info that there was only page, he would have probably committed for the walker, but it worked out on right side. And now we're here, and the enemy backed out. And this happens. This tends to happen. It's just about what you do next here, right? And notice, as soon as there's nothing else to do, I shove the creep wave, right? And we put pressure on the walker. Putting pressure on the enemy side and extending the control of map you have is the #1 essential thing. And because the pocket decided to stay here and try to defend, we get a free kill. And my team is fighting. I'm pretty low. I got hit by quite a few pocket abilities. So I'm playing it kind of safe. But I stay here and keep on supporting my team. Because it's just the best thing to do. The only other choices I would have here, this is actually pretty simple. There's not any good creep farm, right? Like, this is not worth going for that tier 2 camp. And by the time I'm in blue, right, my 7 is actually pushing quite well, and he might get the tower. I don't remember if he gets here, but like by the time I'm there, it's probably over. So it's best to stay with the people I can help, which is like these two that are fighting, and I know there's 2 people on the enemy side. And on the other side of the map, the walker that was at 1 HP ended up falling, and we also ended up losing 2 people for it, which is the page and the Abrams. So as soon as I notice that the enemy will hold this, most likely, I go and make sure mid is secured. And now we are obviously in a scenario where we have to defend base because the enemy is pushing into our base. Now this might seem stupid because I'm farming a wave here, but I know most likely the enemy will end up backing out. They actually go for the base guardians, get another flex slot. If I decided to speed back right away, the exact same thing would have happened. I know that the enemy is most likely to back out. If they actually commit, there's no way at 19 minutes that they kill both our shrines and our Patreon, right? Because again, my team will respawn, the 2 people that died will respawn, and people will rotate back, right? So in this scenario, I decided to just like extend my lead or get, we're not leading, we're behind, to get some farm to get value on the map. Next thing I'm looking out for, and I actually did this quite late, I walked the long way around, is make sure that the creep wave is away from our walker so we have control. I see someone coming and I call this out to my team, and I know my Yamato is here. So I speed back real quick because I have money I can buy, and then immediately I go back to that same lane because I see the Infernus pushing and he might commit for it and die for it, but like I just make sure that they can't get the walker for free, like in this case. The enemy runs the urn, and there's really not much we could have done about it because they had such good map control until then. And this was a horrible play by me, by the way. I figured we're chasing, and I teleport in first and die like an idiot. That was like the worst play I did this entire game. And that was just stupid. I knew the enemy had the urn, and usually after they put in the urn, they back out. I knew my team was behind me, but I teleported in like a dumbass. And that is actually almost, that should be a game-losing moment, right? Like, at this point, I gave the enemy team another tower / walker, and now they even end up killing mid. That's how fast it snowballs. But again, because the enemy committed for the mid walker, as I said, I might end up dying here. But we are actually going to win this fight or end up trading quite well considering how far behind we are, because the enemy team decided to push the blue walker. Now, it's looking really rough. And this might have looked like a bad fight, but what you have to understand, if you're behind in money, even if you trade like 3-4-2, it's good for the team that is behind. And we actually end up trading even. In the end, I think it comes out to actually we ended up plus up 1, right? So now we close the gap by quite a bit. Just before this fight, just to show you the net worth, at this point in time, we are 21k behind. And after it's all done, the gap closed to just 16k. So there was a 4k gold swing for my team. But more importantly, we got kills on 4 of the enemy players, which allows us to actually do mid-boss, right? A good rule of thumb for mid-boss is after the 18 to 20 minute mark, depending on your skill level, is where you have enough damage to where you can kill the mid-boss quite fast, because the enemy respawn time is quite long. Now the replay is bugged. It shows 0 seconds, but the longer the game goes, the longer the enemy respawn is gonna be. And because we ended up winning that fight in middle, and they pushed our blue walker, yeah, they got the walker for it. But look at the net worth difference. Just because the enemy decided to overcommit on the blue walker, we're now suddenly only 10k behind. And I say only, it's actually less than that because now we have 3 Rejuvs. And if you know anything about the Rejuv, it will provide a massive amount of map control and a massive amount of control. Because now suddenly the enemy is going to be scared to fight, right? Because in a straight up, if we took a straight up 6v6, it's basically a 6v9 because we have 3 extra lives. Which means now we can start taking the enemy side jungle and playing quite aggressively, which is what I'm doing here, right? In fact, I played so aggressive, I might in the end even up dying for it because a pocket is chasing me. But this fight is going to be good for us. I can already tell you, and I don't even remember this fight. This fight is going to be good for us because the enemy committed and we have Rejuvs. And with Rejuvs, with all the buffs it takes, it gives us, and the urn that we just deposited, suddenly the game is looking close to even. The map control is looking quite nice. And this is really the first time in the game where I felt like I could breathe. For the rest of the game, you really saw me and my team avoid bigger team fights just simply because the enemy was ahead in money and it's really hard to win those team fights. But now, because we have to be less scared of dying because we have a second life, a respawn, we can play more aggressive. And notice how immediately we're taking a lot of map control. And the enemy is still trying to contest us here, right? In fact, they're going on me. They're doing a good job at denying me from stealing their farm. But I'm not in the greatest risk. If I ended up dying there, I had another life and my team could rotate over and get this, right? And what naturally happens when a Rejuv is claimed by one team, if you played correctly, the team with the Rejuv will just get ahead the longer you have it. Which is also why it's a really, really big mistake that a lot of people do, where they get the Rejuv and then suddenly they run in and just force a fight in their base or force a fight on their walker. Because that's the situation where the enemy has enough of an advantage, defensive advantage, that can kind of counteract the Rejuv, right? So almost always the correct play after Rejuv is taking map control, taking farm, and making sure that the enemy does not get as much farm as you. And I'm Wraith, right? And at this point, I'm very fast at farming. So I decide to clear quite a bit of the map here, especially the Sinners, to make sure I get enough money, get my next power spike, which I'm really close to. I have Leech. And as soon as I have Leech here, I think I'll show up in that fight. And it might seem like this is a selfish play, and it is to an extent. But I see the Rejuvs, I see my team is still healthy, we still have one, right? So it's not the worst play that I come in late and maybe clean up kills, or make sure that my team secures it, right? And the pocket gets out here, but notice how my number one thing is pushing out the wave. And my team is doing a great job at that fight, but because the wave is pushed, we can take more and more map control, and suddenly the game is snowballing really hard for us, right? Where, what is the enemy realistically gonna do? It is pretty hard for them in general because there's not even any objectives to take anymore other than our base, right? They did do a good job in the early game to go for objectives. With all this map control, we're basically free to do what we want. And as soon as the enemy overcommits, right, because we have this space, this map control, as long as the enemy is down, we can end up pushing the enemy base or staying around the enemy base. Because again, our Yamato that was low in that fight, right, can very easily go back to base, heal up, and come back into the fight. So how do you use this info I just provided to make you win more games in Deadlock? The way you want to think about ziplines is lifelines to your team, but more often than not, map control, okay? The further the ziplines are into enemy territory, the safer you can invade the enemy jungle, go for kills there, go for farm. And a big mistake I see, especially in lower rank, is that people walk past the ziplines. The number one rule for you should be to never walk past the zipline, even for a kill. Because when your zipline ends, the enemy zipline starts. And when the enemy zipline starts, that means the enemy can retreat easier, they can get away from you easier, and they can send reinforcements easier. And especially if it's toward the enemy side of the map, they can take the zipline back to base, heal up real quick, and come back full in the fight. And then suddenly an even fight that felt like an even fight turned out to be a 4v2 because both enemies went back to base, went back to heal, and then someone else showed up and you're down in numbers and you lose, right? So almost always when I see someone push past the zipline, they end up dying, okay? So that's the first thing I want you to take into account. Don't push past your ziplines basically ever. But play in the radius of your ziplines and take full use of them, okay? So go to that end of the zipline and learn the zipline movement tech. If you are at the end of your zipline and you see enemies coming in, this is just a super basic and pretty easy to do tech where as long as you're not being shot, you hold the button to connect you to the zipline, for me it's spacebar, and then you immediately jump dash off. So you crouch and then you dash. Ideally to the side because it's gonna give you a bit more speed. So it's jump on and jump off and you're gonna be very far away. It's a very good movement tech. It only takes 1 stamina basically for 1 dash. You can even do it without dash, by the way. If you have no dashes left, you can still get on the zipline and crouch off to like go around a corner, right? But I want you to practice is jump on the zipline, crouch off immediately and dash. And if you do it correctly, if you time it correctly, you go insanely far with 1 dash jump, okay? So, and there's really a very small risk of you being shot because if you do it correctly, there's gonna be basically like 1 frame. So as soon as there's not 1 frame. There's gonna be a very low chance of you being shut off because you're gonna dash off the zipline before you even connect to it. Right, you go immediately and jump dash off, okay? Also means, next thing I want you to do is always push out lanes. And I hope this video showed why it's so essential to push out lanes. Because if the lane is pushed, that means suddenly I can go into the enemy jungle, I can steal the enemy sinners, right? And I can get more value and map control that way. I've recently started playing a new Wraith build, which is like all green Wraith, where I go giga tanky and I ignore fighting the enemy and I just push out waves and farm sinners. And it is working incredibly well in Eternus games right now. I'll make a video on that. Like it's probably going to be the next video out on this channel. And it really uses all the principles that I showed in this video, where I ignore everything and shove waves. And because I shove waves, my team has more map control than the enemy at all times. And even when my team is behind, because I keep lanes constantly shoved, more often than not, we come back in the long run. I end up getting more and more money. And again, creep waves are actually the best way to get money in this game, other than sinners. And if you do them fast, like they will give you even more money than sinners, right? So don't think of killing the lane creeps as just money. Think of it as control of the map that then gives you enemy jungle camps, enemy sinners, sacrifices, and kills on the enemy, okay? Next thing I want you to understand is if your walkers are still standing, they are also #1 priority to defend. Not only because they give the enemy some money, but because of the concept I explained earlier, which will give them naturally more map control across the entire map. And that is from the point the walker dies, right? As soon as the walker dies, for the rest of the game, the enemy team will have more map control on that side of the map naturally until you end up killing their walker, right? If one walker is intact and the other is not, that means the team with the intact walker has more map control on that side of the map, which again means more money, more kills. If the enemy is coming to this side of the map, right, and invading my jungle, and there's no ziplines close, how are they going to get there? They're going to take longer, which means you have the advantage. But you only have the advantage because of your zipline. It's the best movement tech in the game. And the only thing that really comes close is vents. But vents are a different story. They're like more used for escape. And I'll end up making a video on them like eventually. But yeah, I wanted to make this video because I just really feel like a lot of people look at ziplines as like, oh, I can go back to base and heal. And they don't understand the significance of it. It's like a free teleport to your team. Right? It's just that the teleport takes a bit. And the better you get at movement, the faster that teleport is going to be. I'm going to end on this, and I always say this. Passive teams lose. If you're scared of dying, and if you're scared of taking risks, you will never become a really, really good Deadlock player, because it is more essential that I shove out a creep wave maybe even get a kill on a walker or get damage on the walker and then make 4 people rotate to give my team the rest of the map, rather than me sitting on my own walker and safely farming my own side of the jungle. If you're behind and you're just sitting in your own jungle and you're farming your loser camps, by the way, this is a term that was used way back and I haven't heard it in a while, so I'll bring it back. Loser camps are the camps right next to your base. And the reason these camps are called loser camps is because only the losers farm them. And not in the sense of like you're losing the game, but also because you're bad at the video game. Now, I'm not saying never farm these camps. I'm saying if you're behind and your first instinct is to farm these camps, what is the enemy gonna do during this? They're gonna farm all the rest of the map, and if they play properly, they're gonna get ahead. They're gonna get more ahead. You're not actually catching up because you're farming, you're losing, right? That's why they call loser camps. So push out the wave first, get some map control, and then farm the jungle. I hope that was useful. As always, appreciate your support. Support has been crazy over the last few weeks. I feel like I don't say this enough. Let me know what you want to see next. And until next time, see you friends. Bye-bye.